So the final fish that we're going to look at is the red gurnard. And this is a remarkable fish in many ways, morphologically, showing many specializations to its benthic way of life. So this is a fish that lives on the bottom of the sea and feeds on relatively large-bodied prey. We'll look at the mouth parts in a second. I just want to show you a couple of characteristic features. So red gurnard have a really long, spiny first dorsal fin. This one's looking a little bit worse for wear, but you can imagine in life that is a really impressive dorsal spine, suggesting that this fish is protecting itself using these very sharp spiny rays. It has a second dorsal fin, which again is slightly dried out now, but can be seen on the second part of the dorsal part of the fish there. And the most remarkable thing, I suppose, about this fish is its front end. So you can see that it's got a sort of duck-billed appearance. It has a shovel nose, and the reason that this is the case is that it uses this to actually upturn rocks and stones that it's in its environment. This fish feeds on the sorts of prey that live under rocks and stones, and also that lie buried in the sand and in the gravel. So this shows many adaptations to that way of life. It's also got a relatively large eye at the front, and you can see that would give it great light gathering powers at the depth at which it lives, at the bottom of the sea, where it's generally quite murky. So if we turn the fish to look at us, you should be able to see, I hope, that this fish has a really big mouth. If we open up its lower jaw, you should be able to see that the gape on this fish is substantial. It's capable of opening its mouth very, very wide indeed to ingest really quite large-bodied prey. As I say, this fish feeds on the sorts of prey that live in the sand and the gravel and under rocks on the bottom of the sea. There are other remarkable adaptations of this fish as well. You may have noticed that this pectoral fin here, which I'm just showing the complete pectoral fin, is divided into two parts. We have the top part of the pectoral fin, which, although slightly damaged, you can see is relatively standard for a fish like this. It's quite long, but it has fin rays and is connected by a fin membrane, which allows this fish to swim. But then also you'll see that the first three rays of this fin are very specialized into three appendages. Okay, so these are the first rays of that pectoral fin, and they're specialized into these appendages which actually help the fish during its foraging. So let me just try and demonstrate that for you. So this fish, you can see the three on the other side as well, would naturally be laying on the bottom of the sea, slightly upturned at the front, and it uses these appendages to sense for movement and electrical activity in the substrate around the front of its body. So this fish moves along on these appendages, feeling and sensing the gravel in which it's living. And it can use them, these individual sort of appendages are equipped with lots of sensory cells that can detect electrical activity and also detect motion. It uses those in order to sense for prey that it's feeding on. If something living in the gravel moves or emits a tiny electrical signal, the fish can detect this, and then it opens this cavernous mouth and ingests the fish or the crab or the shrimp or whatever it is whole. So this fish is supremely well adapted then for a benthic lifestyle, living on the bottom of the sea. We can see that if we actually lay the fish on its belly, it sits quite happily in that position. It's got a fairly soft body, the musculature isn't particularly dense. It has a very hard skull, which is also at the same time quite sharp and armoured. So you can see there are spines just here, for example. There are spines on the operculum, and also a spine just here on the pectoral girdle. Also, these spines, of course, in the pectoral fin. This is a really difficult fish for other predatory fish to attack and eat because of this armament that it has. And this fish does not rely on speed or camouflage for escape. It merely relies on the armament and defences that it has to protect itself against predators. This is a female, or it may be a juvenile male, and so the pectoral fins are not especially adapted or enlarged. But in sexually mature males, these pectoral fins are really elaborate. They're very large and they are sort of iridescent blue in colour, and we think that they are used in sexual display towards females. So red gurnard are a very common fish. They're found all around the shores of the UK in relatively shallow water, but they live at the bottom of the sea, and they're a really interesting fish for us to study.